Hello, welcome to Focus, a show that focuses on community, unity, and service. Today, we're going to focus on the Vintage Radio and Communications Museum of Connecticut. I'm your host, Marc, and today we're going to talk to a couple of the volunteers about this amazing museum right here in Windsor, Connecticut. Just in the lobby alone, we see a lot of cool things. Can't even imagine what they have inside the museum. Let's go see what they got going on. Hello, welcome back to Focus. We're here with Skip Bolton. He's one of the volunteers here at this awesome museum. Tell us a little about how the museum came about and how you got involved.
1990, it started in the garage of a John Ellsworth. He had purchased a radio at a tag sale, and it just started collecting radios from there. Outgrew his garage, went to 4 other locations, be it the main street in East Hartford, and then here in Windsor. That started about 9 years ago, and we have grown substantially since then. The word has gotten out nicely. People have brought pieces in, many of them one of a kind. We try to get most of them going, but some of them just totally beyond repair. So our museum has grown very, very nicely, and many different, through the ages, pieces that could still be used.
Wow, that's crazy. So I know some of the things I've seen, some of the signs say like 1900s and up straight through. How many pieces do you guys have? Do you even know how many pieces
Haven't
of
got
stuff?
the slightest
yeah,
idea.
it seems like a lot of stuff.
It could be thousands of pieces.
So tell me a little bit about how you got involved in being a part of the museum.
I heard about the museum. My hobby is ham radio, and there is a piece of the museum for a ham radio station. And I came in and thought, gee, these guys are having a lot of fun playing with all of these old toys, which I remember a lot of them from my childhood back in the 40s and 50s. So I became a tour guide. We have other fellows that do actual radio repair, but that was how I got into the museum.
Now, were you involved in radio as a profession or anything before this? Or
No, my occupation was insurance.
Oh, okay, because you have the voice for it, so that's what I thought maybe.
Yeah, I've been told that many times.
I've been told I have a face for radio, so there you go. So if someone was looking to come in to be a volunteer here at the museum, how would they go about doing that?
They contact John Ellsworth at our location here in Windsor at the Communications Museum, and he would probably have them work with me, taking them around and giving them the information all on the different pieces. It might sound like a lot to remember, but they would be mentored and work that way.
Is that like the thing that you're most in need of volunteer-wise, is like docents and that kind of thing? Or?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So what other things can people come here and do at the museum besides just look at the stuff? I see over in the corner you have something going on over there, which we'll look at later.
Yes. One of the big things, people bring a radio in, can't be repaired, can't do anything. We pull the tubes out and test them. We have lots of tubes and lots of the commercial tube testers, and sell them on eBay. That's the money we get to keep the museum running.
Wow.
Because glass tubes are not made anymore.
Yeah. And now you have this stuff that's here on the floor, which we've seen a little bit just walking around before we started doing the interview, and we'll see more when we get the big tour. But I see there's hidden doors over here. What's behind the hidden doors?
Behind there are racks, floor to ceiling, with old radios, TVs, movie projectors that eventually will be worked on. But a lot of it, parts come out to go into other radios or TVs to try to get them working, which we'll be seeing a little bit further on.
Wow. So if someone to come down and check out the museum, when do you guys usually open? What are your guys' hours? And how would they find out more information about the museum?
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Doors open at 10. Doors close, 3 o'clock for a Thursday, Saturday and Sunday we're open till 5.
Is there a fee for anyone to come in and take the
Depending
tour?
on, we have a price list. Seniors, the lowest. Students, a discount there. And then for a regular family, we would have a small amount for children. Anybody under 12, they would be free.
Nice. So if someone's looking to find out where to come to the museum, want to give people the address or where a good place to find out more information
Best
about it?
bet would be our email address.
Okay.
That's posted.
Yeah, awesome. So we'll show everyone that, and we'll be back in a little bit. Skip's going to give us an awesome tour, a highlight tour of this museum, and I'll be back with that in just a minute. All right, now we're going to take a little bit of a tour of the museum. Skip's going to tell us about all these awesome old radios. Tell us about what this display's about.
In the early days of radio, there weren't that many radio stations. So getting a station was a bit of a challenge for somebody. They had to have an outside antenna, or this one would be inside. All of them would be battery operated. A lot of homes were not wired for electricity yet. So again, they had to have batteries. And it was a challenge, and there were instructions that came with the radio. Most of them, you had to buy the speaker separately. That was more money.
Yeah.
But we've got one here, 1923, $88. We were able to get this one going. The sound is coming out of an original speaker.
Wow.
All of the other radios we were not able to get going because parts are impossible to find, along with the tubes.
Yeah.
But this was an example of how radio started. As radio progressed, people threw these away. A lot of these are one of a kind.
All right, now we're starting here at the very beginning of time of this kind of stuff. In the 1800s, we got some awesome telephones here. You have some displays over on this side about the earliest things, printing press and such. But you have a little bit about the Edison. Tell me a bit about this.
The Edison first player had to be cranked up, no electricity. That's a recreation, but he used original wax. And that's a volume control.
Wow. Kind of like a trumpet from... So how did you guys come about getting this? Like, how did you guys find one of these?
Again, people cleaning out their attics, their basements, would bring these in once they found out about our museum.
Yeah.
And we spent some time cleaning this up. The cabinet was pretty rough. The mechanism was basically still the same, but we were able to get it going. And then we found online these recreation of songs that this can be played. We have another one over here, basically the same mechanism, just the sound comes out through here. But again, Edison's very, very first player that people could have at home.
Wow. So what would be the time frame for this? Like,
late 1800s.
wow, that's crazy.
91, 92, 93. That's when it first started to come out.
Wow. Now you mentioned before we started going through all this stuff that you have a little thing about the Titanic. We're gonna head there now.
Yes, we do.
Let's head there now.
Okay.
Check that out. So now we're in that area you were talking about the Titanic. As you see here, we got a photo of the recreation of the radio room from the Titanic.
Recreation of Titanic's radio room.
Wow. And so this is, what is this? that we're looking at?
Marconi's spark gap type of transmitting. All it was a burst of energy, much the same as lightning, going out through through the huge antennas that were on the Titanic. When the Titanic hit the iceberg, sent out the distress message. Back then, it was CQD. CQD meant distress. Unlike today, we're used to the SOS. But again, Marconi's, and this is a very small example of what was on the Titanic,
Yeah.
put out into the air about 250 miles. Other ships would be able to receive the bursts of energy, again, much the same as lightning.
So is this like the precursor to like the telegraph?
Telegraph was first.
Okay.
Then Marconi came along and invented this, brought the Morse code that was on the telegraph, and was able to have the communication, like a lot of the passengers on the Titanic were sending messages to friends or business people in New York.
Awesome. So where are we headed next on the tour?
Just down the aisle.
All right, let's go take a look at that. All right, so as we go around the museum here, we've seen some cool stuff already, but now you're going to show us this amazing contraption.
We've all heard of Mr. Tesla. Worked for Mr. Edison for a while, and they parted company because Mr. Tesla wanted to give everybody free electricity with something called the Tesla coil. He literally put electricity out into the air, and for miles around he had a gigantic one of these, had light bulbs just laying on the ground, and they all lit up with the free electricity he was putting into the air. Mr. Edison wanted lines on the street, meters on the houses. That's where they parted company. So this is called the Tesla coil. The high voltage coming off of the top, illuminating the fluorescent tube.
So how much wattage is being pumped out of that right now?
It uses very, very high voltage. Oh, there goes the top again. But that's the basis of it, very, very high voltage.
Wow, that's crazy. So we're going to move on to other cool
Yes.
things here in the museum in just a bit.
Yes.
We'll see that in just a second. All right, so now we've come from Tesla's amazing machine, and now we got this amazing machine, which is from around
The 1920s, 1930s, the Crosley people made refrigerators. Back then, women didn't have the convenience of microwave, frozen foods, prepared items. They had to spend a lot of time in the kitchen. And they wanted to listen to their soap operas or possibly news. So Crosley put a radio in the refrigerator.
Border of potential terrorism. It's a conspiracy theory.
So that it still works.
Yeah.
As far as we know, there are only 3 of these left in the United States, and this may be the only one where the radio still works. Yes, we had to work on it to get it going. But the old type of refrigerator with the ice cube tray,
Yeah.
as time progressed, the refrigerators became more efficient, and people would just throw these away.
Yeah.
So again, this may be the only one where the radio is still working.
Operational.
MAGA extremists.
So how much were these when they first came out? Like if someone were to buy one off the showroom floor, kind of.
Oh, they were probably $200-300 back then. Yeah, that was a lot of money.
Yeah, that was
but
big money back then.
before that, then it was the blocks of ice that
Yeah.
people had
Shipped
to use.
on a truck. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So where are we heading to next in the?
Just around the corner.
All right, let's take a look at. Let's head over there. All right, so now we were transitioning from like the early 50s and stuff, and now we're coming into the birth of television, which is where I come from. So that's the thing that I am excited about seeing. Tell us what about some of this stuff and how like the transition went for people from radio to TV.
New York City, TV pretty much started there with the transmitters, the studios. These two are the early, probably 1942, 43, then World War came along and they had to stop making them. We were able to get them going. Earlier TVs, the screen was much smaller, so they had to use big magnifying glasses. A TV with the box with everything in it.
Wow.
The
Record
round
player, radio.
TV. They hadn't come to the square screens yet. Over here, we have the early color TV, and more of the televisions now have the square screens. Just that would be coming through the 50s, the mid-50s, things really started to move on, and the later 50s. Then the Japanese started to get into the television market.
Like the color TVs came around like what time, around the 60s?
And
era?
that would be 58, 59, 60.
Okay. All right. So we're moving right along. Things are starting to get a little bit more like people would see nowadays, kind of looking kind of things.
Yes.
So where are we heading to next?
The studio that we have a recreation of
Okay.
the early sound studio.
All right. Let's take a look at that next. So now we're moving into what we were talking about just before, the sound booth area. But before we get into that, this is a very important microphone in the history of the world. Do you want to tell us a bit about it?
Yes, the baseball player standing in the middle of the baseball field in front of this microphone saying, "I'm the luckiest man in the world." He was dying from ALS. Lou Gehrig, that's the microphone that he talked into.
Crazy that you guys have it here, and you said before we started recording that it still works.
Yes, all we have to do
Wow.
is just connect and to be able to use it. Most of these microphones here do work, but yes, that is very, very famous microphone.
So if you're any kind of sports fan, you need to come down and check this out and the museum, but definitely come check this out. But tell us what about this room and what it's the recreation of.
Recreation of the early sound studios. That is, we have a book showing performers standing in front of microphones with papers in their hands. They're reading a script, be it a mystery, be it soap opera, that sort of thing. And they would have, and we have in one corner an organ. On one side we have the sound effects men, items that he would use for various parts of a piece that they were doing. All of the soundproofing would literally be for doing types of programs back then that needed a full quiet while the performance or the show is being done. We have a room next to it that the engineers would use to control everything, be it the microphones, be it the amplification, or some recordings.
So now for like folks who are younger that might not get the reference, but like the Shadow Nose,
That's
the Green
right.
Hornet, all those old serials, Dick Tracy like we were talking about earlier.
Or the old War of the Worlds, 1938,
Yes.
that created some
Orson
real
Welles.
panic in New York City.
And you have over here in the corner, you have a theremin,
Yes,
which is pretty awesome.
I'll turn it on. Human body, 73% fluid.
Yes.
I am absorbing the waves coming out of here. That's the volume control. This is used a lot in science fiction movies,
Yes, any of the
radio
old,
programs.
yeah. any of those old movies and TV shows and radio serials back in the day that had all those things.
Yes, it was brought over from a Russian, and he perfected it, and it was used quite a bit in the radio programs and even some theater work.
Yeah, and they're still used today. You still see
Yes.
people using them, so that's amazing. So where's our next stop? We have the awesome booth you guys have outside that we're going to talk
Yes,
about?
the ham radio station.
All right, let's go bug Bob and have him tell us about that.
Okay, fine.
All right. All right, as we progress through the museum here, we're going to talk with Bob Allison, who is in charge of the Amateur Radio Club here at the museum.
Yep.
Tell us a bit about how this all started here at the museum.
Well, many of our volunteers are ham radio operators, and they started an amateur radio club here in 2008. Gordon Horn was W2 WTV. He was the founder of the club, and it's been going ever since. And in recent years, we've rebuilt it a bit, and we've improved the equipment and our antenna systems, and we're doing more and more and more here, and we're soon to have a amateur radio satellite tracking station.
Okay.
So we'll be able to communicate through amateur radio satellites to talk to other radio amateurs around the world.
So for folks who might not know, you kind of hinted at it, but what is ham radio?
Ham radio is not like broadcasting. Broadcasting is what? One-way radio, just from the transmitter from the radio station to the listener. This is two-way radio. So we hear radio amateurs from around the world, and we get to talk back to them. So we actually transmit. In order for us to be able to transmit, we have to be licensed by the FCC. This is unlike CB. The CB doesn't require a license. Amateur radio has a lot of rules because it's an international hobby. So therefore, we have to take an exam to at least prove that we know what we're doing so we don't create any international incidents.
Yeah, yeah. So if people were to come in here and join the club, how would they go about doing that? Like, what would they have to do to be
Stop
a part?
by on a weekend like a Saturday when the
Okay.
museum's going full blast, and they can stop in and we can explain what goes on and give them a few handouts here and there and point them in the right direction of how to get started.
All right. So how did you get involved in being a part of the museum?
Well, I always like to volunteer, first off. I like to give back to the community. But I've been a radio amateur for 50 years.
Okay.
I've also been involved with television broadcasting and also radio broadcasting. So I started here, had nothing to do with the ham club. I started here just simply as a docent, just bringing people around on tours because, well, I love antiques and I love old technology, the phonographs, the radios. And so I had a historical knowledge of the background of everything that you see on the floor here. So that was one. Two, I was involved in television at Channel 30, the NBC station in Connecticut for 28 years. So I'm familiar with broadcasting and how that all worked. I just like it so much I wanted to be around it more, so I wanted to volunteer here. And they have great swap meets here 5 times a year. And I came here during a swap meet with my pickup truck and full of stuff. And so I tailgated here. And then I went into the museum and looked around and I said, this place is cool. And John Ellsworth, who is the founder of the museum, gave me a tour and said, hey, we need docents to show people around. And I said, hey, I can do that. So I started doing that in 2008. So 15 years later, I'm still involved with many facets of the museum and also the president of the ham club here.
That's awesome. So like we were talking about, if people were to look for information about how to join the ham club, besides coming here to the museum, would be the easiest way to do that?
You can contact us through our website, which is www.vrcmct.org. And we have a separate page just for amateur radio and the station here.
All right, that's amazing. So thank you for giving us a little quick tour of all this.
Sure. Can I explain maybe some of the radios?
Yes,
They're really
please do.
cool.
Yes, yes.
I'm sure there are radio amateurs in your audience here.
Hold on.
All right, so now we're over here at the filament.
This
what is
beast.
Yes.
This beast is a Gates BC1T AM broadcast transmitter.
Okay.
These were originally produced from the mid-1950s to about 1970. And this particular one came out of a station in Arizona, KPGE, which played country music 24/7 in northern Arizona.
As it would.
It was used until 1995, and then it was abandoned for something about a 20th of its size.
I bet.
So we ended up with it and converted it to the amateur band, the 75-meter ham band.
Okay.
So
What do you guys use this for now?
Well, we use this for actually speaking, and the mode that we talk on is amplitude modulation, just like AM radio that you have in your car.
Okay.
This is the same mode, and it's an old-fashioned legacy mode, as we call it, but many people still operate AM. The audio quality is very, very good. It's like broadcasting.
Yeah.
And this particular transmitter allows us to run the maximum allowable power by the FCC, which is 1,500 watts PEP or 375 watts carrier.
Awesome. So when you guys use this, is it able to, like, people able to hear it?
Oh, on this whole eastern half of the United States.
Okay.
And out to the West Coast under certain radio conditions.
Oh, well, there you
So
go.
it gives us a great coverage, and the signal goes straight up and then comes back down again.
Yeah.
So it's a very high takeoff angle, and it comes back down in a regional area. It gives us great coverage.
That's
The
amazing.
antennas are out back.
Wow.
So we have very large vacuum tubes in there. There's 4 of them. They're called 833As.
Yeah.
2 of them are used to put the voice on the signal.
Yeah.
2 modulator tubes and 2 final amplifier tubes.
Okay.
And we actually run this transmitter in the low power mode to keep the power down to the legal limit, which is 375 watts carrier.
Yeah.
But we make this up with our one of our receivers in here, and it makes a great combination. We have a very elaborate audio chain that allows us to have the best possible sound, and we can control our bandwidth, so we can control the amount of dial space that we take up. When it's really congested in the amateur bands, we can narrow down our signal. When it's not so crowded, we can widen it out and be broadcast quality.
Well, there you go.
So this is one of our transmitters. We have more out back too.
I've heard you guys got stuff everywhere.
Yep. So this is one of our key pieces here.
That's awesome. Thank you for the time. Thank you for telling us all about all this stuff.
You're welcome.
And we'll be back with more in just a bit. So as we wrap up our day here at the Vintage Radio and Communications Museum of Connecticut, I want to thank Skip and Bob for talking with us and giving us some time today. As you can see, we even have old TV cameras from back in the day, and there's so much more here to see that we didn't even get to. So definitely come down, check this place out. They have computers, which we didn't even get to go into that stuff. There's way more stuff. There's stuff in the back room that I'm going to go try to sneak in and see that I saw looking through the window. But definitely come down, check it out. Right here in Windsor, in the middle of Connecticut. It's crazy. There's so much more to check out. So we'll see you next time here in Focus.